Hello and welcome. Welcome. How are you today? How is the sound? Because I have a new microphone, so I hope that it's working well for you and that the sound is okay. I see we have Mumsy in the house. Good to see you. Can you let me know how's the sound for you? We're here today to talk about Thanksgiving. We have a presentation about Thanksgiving so we can learn about the origins and the true story about Thanksgiving. We're going to learn about pilgrims. We're going to learn about Native American tribes. I guess maybe a little bit about turkeys, a little bit of echo, but okay. All right. So let me, and I have invited my students to join us this evening. They will get extra credit if they chat or if they leave comments afterwards in replay. Do you hear noise? That's my cat playing. Sorry. Hey, Gibbo is also in the house. It's okay. Carry on. A little bit of echo. All right. So let's get the presentation started. Thanksgiving. Ta-da. Let's see. So our first slide here, as you can see, the outline. Oops. We are going to be talking about the first settlers of America. There's Liang. Liang is in the house. One of my students. Great to see you here. Thank you. So we're going to talk about who were the first settlers to America, so we can get some context as to what was going on. We're going to talk a little bit about the Native American tribes. And then we're going to talk about what's the difference between pilgrims and Puritans, because you'll hear both of those words about this early time. What's the difference? And then we're going to talk specifically about the Mayflower, which is the name of the ship that brought the pilgrims. And then we will summarize the Thanksgiving holiday. All right, so let's get started. The first European settlers. Well, we have to go back to the 2nd century, sometime during the 1000s. We had the Norse and the Vikings coming in the northern part of the continent of North America. Remember, it wasn't the country of the United States of America yet. Okay, so they're pretty much the first Europeans to reach North America that we know of. I mean, there are alternative histories that you can learn about, but that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, so the northern part of the continent of North America, which is now Canada. So maybe as far south as Maine, the state of Maine. I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on Viking and Norse exploration. All right, but there's definitely evidence of them coming to North America. Next up, we have Christopher Columbus. Some people love him, some people hate him. I grew up celebrating Columbus Day. It was a holiday that I enjoyed. But some people don't like him. In any case, he did sail to North America in 1492. So he was representing Spain. He was actually Portuguese, but the government of Portugal would not fund his exploration. So he went to Spain and they said, yeah, we'll give you the money. And so he crossed the Atlantic Ocean with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. Don't ask me which one he was on. It's a great trivia question, but I don't remember. Okay, so first he hit the islands, the Caribbean islands, and then he did reach Florida, okay, what we now call Florida. Yes, you did hear Vikings, Aurora. Gibbo says Canada belongs to us. Gibbo's from the UK. So, yes, England, they are part of the Commonwealth of England, or the United Kingdom. Okay. So, next, we have in the 1500s, there were quite a few ships that reached America. Okay. And Chalet is in the house, and your grandkids are here. Good. Maybe they'll learn something. So in the 1500s, you had British, you had French, you had Scots, and you had Irish. And they were primarily in the north, again, both in what is now Canada and what is America. We had fur trappers in New York, in the area of New York, Pennsylvania, that lived and they settled. They worked really well with the tribes, the Native American tribes, but they weren't colonies. They weren't cities. They weren't even villages. They pretty much just, it was like camping. You know, they just did their own thing. They were fur trappers for the most part. Now, some of the Scots and Irish during this time that were like Nova Scotia and parts of Canada, they did try to settle. So, moving on, what comes next? We are going to talk about in 1607. That's the next big date. Now, there were ships in 1601, 1602. Okay, there were more than there were several ships that were coming to North America. But in 1607, that's the next big point that we want to notice. And that was John Smith, who was British, settling Jamestown. So now this was the first colony. Okay. The British were 500 years behind the Vikings. There you go. That's right. You're good with your math, Aurora. So now we have Jamestown is in Virginia. Okay. And so they had struggles. There was also Roanoke Island where, you know, some people disappeared, and Roanoke, Virginia. And then anyway, that's a whole nother part of history. We just want to highlight that Jamestown was first settled in 1607. My sound is still wanky. Maybe I need to move it a little bit closer. I don't know, maybe I need to move it farther away. I did get this is a brand new microphone. I wasn't going to go live tonight without having a new microphone. Okay. So, next major point. We want to talk about Henry Hudson, who came in 1609 to explore the Hudson River in New York, from New York all the way up to Canada. And he was representing the Dutch. So New York was called New Amsterdam. It wasn't called New York yet because the British bought it from the Dutch later. But at this point in the 1600s, the Dutch had New York. Okay. Chile's going to be right back. Not to be confused with a winky. A winky is a pacifier. Okay. And then we finally get to the Mayflower Pilgrims. And so as we're getting our context, you see all these different areas with different settlers and different settlements. The Mayflower was actually trying to go to Jamestown and to be part of that colony. But the weather didn't agree with them, and so they ended up in Massachusetts. Hey, Pat Panya is here. Nice to see you joining us, Panya. Another one of my students. Aurora says, Frank, we had longer to sail to. Oh, okay. Don't worry. In the comments, I'm going to let Gibbo and Aurora chit chat with each other about UK and Sweden. They're having fun with each other. That's good. Yeah. So the Mayflower got in a storm. Wasn't able to make it to Jamestown, and also they got kind of a late start because. When they first left Europe, and I'll talk more specifically about that in a minute, but I think they left maybe in June. I think in June of 1620, and they went from the Netherlands to England, and then from England they started going, and they had two ships together, but the other ship started getting water. It was broken, so they had to go back to land. And so then they fixed it. So then they had time to fix it, and then maybe July they started again, and it happened again. So they had to go back again, and then they went ahead and decided to sail without the other ship wasn't going to make it. So all the supplies and all the people got onto the Mayflower. Okay. Rainsy is here, another student. Good to see you. Okay. So they arrived, I think, in August. I might have it on the next, coming up. And it might have been more like September, October, which is really late in the year to be arriving in this part of the world. It gets cold. There's snow. It's not a good time to land. They were supposed to get there in time to be able to plant some crops before winter, but no. Now they're arriving right as it's getting cold, so they can't plant any crops. Okay, so before we talk about the Pilgrims, we just want to make sure we talk about the Native American tribes. So you can see on the map here the different Algonquians, Iroquoians, Muskegeans. Okay, there's all, Choctaw, Seminole, the Mohicans, the Pequots, the Wampanoags. Okay, now the Wampanoags are the ones that are going to play into this story. But there's also one particular Native American who's very central to the story of Thanksgiving, and that's Squanto. Now, so 1620 is when the Mayflower comes. But back in 1605, remember I told you there were other ships that were going to America. Squanto actually got captured like a slave on a ship captained by a man named George Wayworth, and who takes him to England. Took him to Europe. He escaped the whole slave thing. and he ends up in London, okay, where he learns English. So in 1619, he's able to get on a ship back home. But by the time he gets back home, his whole tribe died of disease, and there was nobody left. So he joined the Wampanoags. Okay. So in 1621, as we're going to see, the Pilgrims are there. Squanto is introduced to the Pilgrims by the chief Samoset. Okay. Oh, Chalet's making deviled eggs. Oh, that sounds delicious. It's going to smell lovely. Mumsy says she's learning new things. She never knew all this. Yeah. Mumsy's my mother, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know. So Pilgrims versus Puritans. What's the difference? Well, a pilgrim is actually any person who journeys to a sacred place for religious reasons. Okay? You can be going to a Buddhist place, you would be a pilgrim. You could be going to a Catholic place, you would be a pilgrim. Because you're making that journey, right? But these particular pilgrims, when we use it in general, and in particular with Thanksgiving, we're referring to this particular group of pilgrims, these people who fled England to the Netherlands, okay, because they were being persecuted for their religious beliefs. In England, you had the main religion was the Church of England, and they didn't like the Church of England, so they called them they wanted to separate, so they were called separatists because they wanted to separate from the Church of England, and so they were the Church of England, and which is all part of the government, arrested them and put them in jail. Maybe some of them died. Okay, so they decided, whoa, we need to get out of here. We're not welcome. We're just going to pack up and we're going to leave. And so they went across the English Channel to the Netherlands. And they lived there for quite a few years. I think 19 years. They were in the Netherlands. And then finally, they were able to arrange a deal that they could ride on the Mayflower. So the Mayflower was like already going. They didn't own the Mayflower. It wasn't their ship. They were passengers on the ship. Okay. And they weren't the only passengers. There were also other just regular people that wanted to go. Maybe they were merchants. Maybe they were poor looking for a new life. But remember, they thought they were going to Jamestown, which was already started as a colony. So some people were going to set up new businesses. And some people, they just wanted to get away from England, or maybe they love England and they didn't want to get away from England. They just had business to do. Okay. And of course you had the crew of the ship as well. The people who worked on the ship are called the crew. So they came to America for religious freedom, and that's why they're the Pilgrims. Now the Puritans are completely different, but they also came in the 1600s, but more like 1640, 1650. Okay, so it's still in the same century, but about 20 to 30 years after the Pilgrims. Okay. And the reason they're not Pilgrims is because the Puritans were not being persecuted. The Puritans were part of the Church of England, and they wanted to be part of this new colony that England was setting up in America. Okay, so that's where we get the Puritans. They were still part of the Church of England, and they came representing England to help colonize America, to help make new cities in America. Gibbo says, yes, they wanted to separate what Bible do Americans read again? Yeah, the King James. I know. But maybe the reason the Americans read the King James Bible is because of the influence of the Puritans rather than the Pilgrims. Okay. So next, now that we've got that clarified, 1620, the first winter. Okay. So they had it pretty rough. When they arrived in Massachusetts, here's the state of Massachusetts, in on like the little map section here at the bottom, and the red area. I think it's saying that the red area is where they maybe first saw land, but they went around. This is called the Cape Cod. Okay, it was named by the previous people that had been there. People had come with ships and landed, and got furs or did fishing or whatever, or they took Native American tribes for slaves like Squanto, but they didn't settle. They didn't build houses. Nobody stayed there. They'd been there, but then they left. Okay, so the Pilgrims are the first ones that were coming and decided to stay. All right, so Cape Cod is that shape like that, right? They went around and in so that they were inside where it was safe. And there's no houses, right? So they have get rid of the cat. There's no houses. And the way that they have to make a house is to take a tree and to take an axe, so a very sharp, like a sharp knife, that's an axe, and cut down the tree. They didn't have any chainsaws. Okay, they had to cut the tree down by hand. And then after they cut the tree, they had to prepare the wood to make houses and build houses. That takes a long time. And it's cold and it's winter. And they can't grow any food. They only have a little bit of food left because they've been on the boat for so long. Remember, they planned to only take, 2 months to get here, but they ended up taking like 4 months, back and forth. They were actually, from the time that they left England for good and got to America, was 66 days. And it says here, yes, they arrived in November. That is so late and so cold. So all the people had to still live on the ship. And then they had the little boats that they would take people from they actually own. This picture, it's funny. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I can count 4 boats, but they only had two little boats. They didn't have 4. So they would take the little boat to the land to chop wood and everything. And the first thing they built was a storehouse. Okay, or like we would say today, a warehouse, so that they could get everything off the ship and onto the land. Then they started building houses one by one. Okay, so this is a nice little picture of that. There were 102 people, meaning passengers, plus 30 crew. Of those 102 people, 30 of them were under 18. Now, there were 35 pilgrims and economic migrants. So they were migrants. You guys know migrant workers. They were moving from from England to America. There were 67. So there's actually a lot more people that were planning on going to Jamestown. They might have even had a brother or sister or somebody waiting for them in Jamestown. But instead, they got stuck here, right? 74 people of the 102 people were male and 28 were female. As I mentioned, it took 66 days and they arrived in November. Of that first winter, so the ship didn't leave until spring, okay, of the next year. So this winter, 53 people died. Some numbers, if depending on who you look at, might say 47, but somewhere between 47 and 53, which is half of the people. And some of them were the crew as well. So a lot of people, and how did they die? They died of disease. A lot of them, they the winter was so cold that they would get sick, and there was nobody to take care of them, and they died. Okay. The next slide, I think, talks a little bit about that. Okay, so this is a quote from William Bradford. He was just one of the passengers, but once they realized that they weren't going to be in Jamestown and that they were landing someplace different, they kind of had to set up their own little government. Because if they were in Jamestown, that was British, right? They would be part of England if they were in Jamestown. But they're not in Jamestown, and so this land doesn't belong to England. So they had to make up their own little constitution that they called the Mayflower Compact, right? And so they elected one leader, and he ended up dying. So William Bradford became the leader of the Pilgrims in Plymouth. They landed in Plymouth, okay? What is now called Plymouth. So this is a quote that he wrote, okay? And in 3 months past, die half our company. They talked a little funny back then. The greatest part in the depth of winter, wanting houses and other comforts, being infected with the scurvy and other diseases, which their long voyage and unaccommodate condition, not having a house, bring upon them. So as there die sometimes 2 or 3 a day, of 100 persons, scarce 50 remain. The living scarce able to bury the dead. Those who are alive are barely able to bury the dead. People who are well, people who are not sick, are not sufficient to tend the sick. There's not enough people to take care of the sick people. There being in their time of greatest distress, the people who are most sick, only 6 or 7 who spare no pains to help them. Only 6 or 7 people were able to care for the sick. 2 of the 7 who were helping were Master Brewer, the Reverend Elder, okay, of the Pilgrims, and Master Standish, the captain. Okay, so those were 2 of the people who were helping those who were sick. The disease fell also among the sailors, so as almost half their company also died before they sailed. This is, by the way, for those of you who are new, let me hide this just for a minute. This is Baby. This is Baby Wilbur. One of my kitties. Just say hi, baby. Yeah. Go on. No. Here he comes again. No, baby. Okay, I'll put him in my lap. Sit down here. All right. Okay. Enough of the cat. Here we go. So, now we're to the first Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims hosted a great feast to celebrate the harvest of crops in 1621. So remember, they arrived in November of 1620. those that survived, those 50 people that survived the winter, were able to plant crops and grow food. So by the next November, they were able to celebrate all the food that they had grown with a big feast, a big dinner. Okay, the Native American Wampanoag tribe taught the pilgrims about the local agriculture, so like about corn. They brought barley and peas, but the peas didn't grow right, so they actually didn't have a lot of peas to harvest, but they did have a lot of barley. Barley is a grain similar to rice. Okay, so their crops included the corn, some beans, maybe, and squash. And those three are actually known as the three sisters. You actually grow, so when you grow corn, you grow the beans and the squash at the bottom of the corn, and the nutrients help each other. So if you plant those three together, they help each other grow. And so they're known, the Native American tribes called it the Three Sisters. And farmers today still do that. They may have also brought onions, carrots, cabbage, and turnips from Europe. Okay. They were able to harvest local nuts. There were a lot of like walnut trees. I think there were chestnut trees. There were a lot of nuts. And then also cranberries and different kinds of berries. They hunted deer, turkey, and ducks primarily. They also had a lot of seafood. Remember, they're right there on the ocean. So they were able to fish. They were able to get clams. I mean, clam chowder is a soup that's very famous in Boston and Massachusetts. Boston clam chowder. So it's very likely that they might have had clams and lobsters and some other seafood as well. But they definitely had turkey, and I think the Indians brought either 4 or 5 deer. It's noted, it's all recorded. So don't quote me. Is it 4 or 5? You have to do the research for yourself. So one more slide, and that's this one. This is our modern Thanksgiving now. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln was the first president of the United States who issued a proclamation that designated the last Thursday of November as a national day of Thanksgiving. Then in 1941, instead of just saying the last Thursday, they changed it, Congress changed it to the 4th Thursday of November. Sometimes you might have a fifth Thursday in a month, depending on how the calendar falls. So they changed it to the 4th Thursday. It's always the 4th Thursday of November. And families get together, they cook turkey, they cook potatoes, they cook stuffing and yams or sweet potatoes, lots of good stuff. I'm not seeing it. I don't know if anybody's putting anything in the chat. Well, the last chat I have is at 9:19, and now it's 9:35. So I'm not sure if my chat stopped or if everybody's just paying attention, that they're not chatting. Oh, there's Mumsy. Yeah, okay, listening. Oh, okay, that's good. So the chat is working. So that's it for the presentation. I did put a link in the description where I found an amazing 5-part video series that really goes into all the details of what happened with the Mayflower. Here's baby. I need to scoot up my chair. I need to scoot up my chair. Um, so I just put the link to the first video in the series. But if you want to learn more, then just click on that first one, and then YouTube will automatically, share the second one, the third one, the fourth one as you watch each of them. If you're interested to learn more details about the pilgrims and their voyage and what they went through. And it's very well done. There's lots of like little animation things and stuff. So that's what I got for you. I'm happy if anybody wants to share their own Thanksgiving stories. If anyone would like to come up and speak, I can put the link in. Just tell me that, I want to come up and talk instead of write something in the chat. Then I will put the link there. Otherwise, I won't bother. But if you want to, we call it coming up on panel. If you want to do that, just say so, and I'll share the link. But there's lots of movies. You can watch movies about Thanksgiving. Does anybody have a favorite Thanksgiving movie? One of the very interesting things about American Thanksgiving and the holiday is that when families come together, it's not always happy, everybody's so happy. There's always some friction. There's always a little bit of fighting sometimes that happens with families. And that's almost part of the tradition, So many different personalities. I think now with so many, with political, it used to be, you could have Democrats and Republicans and independents and Green Party. You'd have different political parties in the same family, and you'd come together on Thanksgiving, and you'd talk about stuff and maybe fight about it a little bit. But now it's like people just won't even go to the house. You say, I'm not going because I don't want to be around that person. It's got very, very divided, I think. Which is a sad thing, because we should be able to come together and put our differences aside and find the things that we can be thankful for. Because no matter how bad things are in our lives, there's always something that's good, right? I'm thankful that the cats are all healthy and the dogs. I'm thankful that I have a house that I can live in. I'm thankful that I do have food to eat. It may not always be the food I want to eat, but I have food to eat. Think positive, Mumsy says. Leon's giving us some heart emojis. So, students, this is the end of the presentation. So if you need to go to bed so that you can get up early for school tomorrow, you're excused. You can go ahead. Thank you so much for joining. Rainsy and Leon are going to get extra credit tomorrow. If anybody else is here that's a student, please say hi in the chat so that I know you're here and I can give you extra credit. Oh, Gibbo says, yeah. Oh, no, not Rainsy. It was Panya. Pat Panya's here. And Leon is here. Of course, if you're watching on replay, students, make sure you write your name in the comments. Leave a comment that you paid attention. What was the most interesting thing that all of you that are here watching that you learned? Hopefully you learned something new. What was the most interesting thing that you learned from the presentation? Who wants to share? You get participation points. That's what I say in class. Anybody? Nobody? All right. Well, I guess that we can go ahead and end tonight's stream. Oh, that thing started back in 1500. That was interesting to Mumsy. I do a live stream tomorrow night. It won't be teaching. It will be just fun and games. So anybody who wants to join tomorrow is welcome to join tomorrow as well. And I look forward to seeing everybody, because no matter what's going on in life, we can always just put it aside for 30 minutes or an hour and just have some fun. And the problems will still be there afterwards, but have a little bit of joy. So I'm going to leave you for this evening. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And same bat time, same bat channel. I will be back tomorrow. And I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, catch you later.